Hi guys, welcome back. This week I talked to a couple of you who were turned away by EEOC because they said your case sounded more like a personality conflict than discrimination. It started me wondering, how does EEOC make a determination like that? So this week I did a little research, and today I wanted to share what I found out with you guys, so that as you're making your case for discrimination, you don't accidentally say something that's going to get it pegged as just a personality conflict. First, let's look at some of the differences between the two. Some of these are fairly obvious and others not so much. But in general, these are some of the things that EEOC is going to be sussing out to make that determination. First, there's the cause. Personality conflicts tend to be driven by differences in things like work styles, ways of communicating, personal values, and other things like that. Discrimination is driven by prejudices, biases, and stereotypes related to a protected characteristic. Adverse actions that arise from personality conflicts aren't illegal. Our boss can be a jerk. They can single us out or play favorites when they're making decisions about things like promotions and other things that are going to impact our career. It only becomes illegal when those things are based on a protected characteristic we have. Another key difference is the symmetry of power. With a personality conflict, those tend to be mutual, and usually they're happening between two people with roughly the same amount of power in the workplace. In a personality conflict, the bad behavior flows in both directions, so much so that it can be hard to tell the perpetrator from the victim. With discrimination, there tends to be an imbalance of power, and the problem behavior is usually flowing in one direction, from the most powerful to the less powerful. There's a clear perpetrator and a clear victim. It is important to recognize that some of our peers have more influence than we do, and that can translate to power. If you're in a situation like that, then you want to make that point in your original complaint, right up front. And of course, there's a difference in how difficult the two are to resolve. Personality conflicts are fairly straightforward. Because they tend to be mutual and both parties are somewhat responsible for what's happening, management can just challenge them both and help them find a way to get along. Resolving discrimination is rarely that simple. Victims tend to be targeted for something they are, not for something they did. And the person who's doing the acting out usually has some power. Powerful people don't like to accept the blame. And employers don't like to accept liability for the things their managers do. So there's a tendency for them to work together to cover it up. And that means for it to be resolved, there's going to have to be an investigation and probably some kind of administrative or legal process to sort out what needs to happen next. The things witnesses say are going to be different between the two situations too. With personality conflicts, witnesses tend to recognize how both parties are rubbing each other the wrong way. And they'll probably talk pretty openly about how it's affected them. They may share stories about times when they tried unsuccessfully to intervene or mediate. With discrimination, witnesses tend to be more guarded. They probably recognize that the person who's doing most of the acting out has most of the power, and they don't want to get involved. If anything, they're going to talk about how they tried to stay out of it and one or both parties dragged them into it. Those are some of the key differences that I found. Now let's talk about personalities and their role in creating personality conflicts. And research has uncovered a few traits that are more likely to lead to conflicts. We all have these traits to some extent, but the more of them we have and the more we let them show, the more likely it is that our situation is going to get pegged as a personality conflict. And unfortunately, that doesn't work in reverse. It's probably not going to help your case to talk about how your boss has these traits too, or that your boss has them at all. So if you tell EEOC all about your boss's caustic personality, then their being caustic to you probably isn't discrimination. It's just who they are. The first problem trait is black and white thinking. Somebody's always right, somebody's always wrong. Usually it's me who's right. We want to be open to understanding the other side and compromise. There's the tendency to overdramatize situations to create an emotional impact. We'll do way better sticking to the facts and the evidence. We can talk about our feelings, but we want to show that we're not controlled by them. And taking things personally creates a defensive attitude that won't do you any favors either. Trying to explain or justify our mistakes only calls more attention to our mistakes. And any time we spend talking about that is time that nobody's paying attention to the illegal things our employer did. Authoritarians, or people who have problems with authorities, are also a problem. At the very beginning of my testimony, my AJ interrupted me and said, "I don't want to hear any more about that. I want you to talk about this other thing." I said, "Yes, sir." During my testimony, I forgot and started talking about the thing he didn't want to hear. And when he corrected me, it felt really harsh. But he was in charge, so I just apologized and got back on track. In retrospect, I think he was gauging my reaction to things like taking orders and being corrected, to see if I was a person who had problems with authority. Making a distinction between personality conflict and discrimination can be tough. For most of us, it's probably a little of both. Being able to sort out what's what for ourselves can help us tell our story to EEOC more clearly, so they can make the right call. I'll see you guys in the next one. Till then, take care and hang in. Fight smart and hang in to win.